bibia akwa shonko so e dey aba POG dwumadi busia formation bibia sesa afi ye no wa dwumadi we so I will like you be share no subscribe to the channel and be ya political trending news bia go through cover me bia hanom POG Media so ene agepene se etifo na busia for ye be bro eje na be true asisi ya no Japka na nasefo asa akoche Bank of Ghana a omu wia sika twitwidie de akogu warehouse a egu contain mo egu boxes mo esitimo a yesi ano Japka na nkofo ene national security service for net makoche omo asisi ano omo sa offer Bank of Ghana for former Bank of Ghana for omo so be hwe omo se ade na omo dia contain dollars and cedis anya accept to Akra abusia for ayehu ye pa na hyehyehye so ayi Japka ene abri also okoye hwehwe mu afa ba bia boxes le etimi kodi warehouse where contain ma any asem keto akra busia for vinji obi biara mbrambo so me say obi biara so mre westram say ma me akọ na ye ni ani aso akotie ni breso aye Japka kasa efa do obi biara.
As if they know the work more than I do. So this is some of the boxes. They've already emptied. And this is the reason why I'm serious about it. This one, I brought this from Bank of Ghana. These are Bank of Ghana boxes where they use importing monies. When we print money from outside Ghana, they come in these boxes. And they are found here. How come? And we brought the Bank of Ghana officials here. And they admitted these are their boxes. Okay. And I see this RMD. It means it has been certified that the money that came was genuine, intact, by Bank of Ghana. And this is their own certification. And when I asked them, say yes, it's from their office. They wrote this. And I said, so what are your boxes doing in this place? What was their response? They couldn't answer.
Specialists should have the legal understanding of all these laws and when they become relevant or applicable. And it is obvious that this was lacking here. Mm-hmm. And that is why we find ourselves where we are. Okay. But at the heart of this is an orchestration, careful orchestration of crime. And the fact that they wanted the free rein to be able to perpetuate it. So they applied for a status that would give them the independence to perpetuate it. And it was rightly disapproved. And they went around other places to try and secure support from there.
You're talking about the request for exemption to
exactly.
use commercial procurement practices.
Now, I always say that the person who has done Ghana this service, not the service, is a certain engineer who used to be at Ghana Highways, who was the one President Akuffo appointed to sit at the Public Procurement Board at the time as the chairman, who oversaw the crafting of this. His name has just escaped me. Mm-hmm. But that man understood procurement as if he has chatted. His name is not coming. Now, that provision in Section 15 was provided for because there are entities that are owned by government, but they operate in an environment which is competitive with the private sector. And so speed is essential. And the public procurement law, as it was passed in 2003, was very specific about the steps you have to take and the duration. And so to complete a complex procurement process, it could take you as long as 6 months. Okay. And you can't do that in a private environment competing with private companies. So that provision was made to enable state-owned businesses that were private operating in nature to not follow this bureaucracy, because then they would have lost out on every transaction if they are competing with the private sector. Mm-hmm. For someone to say that because we are a limited liability company, so we are a private company, it just shows the person doesn't understand law. You should just go and read our Corporate Companies Act. You become a private company when ownership is not of the state. It's of private individuals. That's what makes you a private company.
Which means ECG is bound by PPA, that Act 663.
Yes, because it is 100% owned by the state.
Right.
And their explanation that they use internally generated funds, is it internally generated funds from their pockets?
Right.
It is from the public. It is public funds. So it is still a public organization that runs under the Public Financial Management Act. But even this is provided for in the 663.
Right.
So it just tells me that people do not understand what they do.
That's a good point we should all think on. Lack of legal awareness. That's what you're saying. But let's listen to something else Akwello Markin has been saying to set the context for us to continue the conversation.
ECG, I had the privilege of chairing the board in July. Because I'm a businessman, the first question I ask myself is that how can ECG award a contract? And when the contract is awarded, all the person does is deliver at the port, present bill of lading, and request for payment. I said, with the greatest respect, I don't want to use a word. This is Parliament. I was shattered. I said, how? And ECG would have to pay. So I realized that ECG was paying a lot of bills when they have not even had access to the goods. And when you ask them, I asked the procurement manager, director of procurement, a question. I said, why did he say, oh, chairman, this is the practice since. This is the practice. And they will bring you document. I listened to honorable member for Sekendi, lawyer, you from Sekendi, question meeting. And I am adopting his submissions as though they were mine. The time has come. This politics, somebody says MPP, NDC, it's a system problem that I will any day support this minister to embark on reforms.
What's interesting is that on the back of this ECG, we know that ECG's procurement unit was merged with its housing and estates unit. And the investigative committee report revealed that the procurement director had no prior procurement experience. How much do such structural weaknesses contribute to stuff like what we're seeing right now?
A doctor in Kolebu perform a heart surgery when he hasn't been trained to be a cardiologist.
So it's absolutely crucial.
Do you think you can have a lawyer practice in court in front of the bench and he is not called to the bar?
Well, we have, along that line, we have instances where individuals have read the law for themselves and defended themselves without a lawyer.
No, the court allows you to go to court without a lawyer.
Yeah.
But you can't go to court and hold yourself out to be a lawyer.
A lawyer, right.
You go to jail. It's criminal. It's impersonation.
You think that's a contributing factor to what we're seeing?
And this problem, listen, I'm putting it on record. When President Akuffo appointed the board back in 2017, or no, his second term, I wrote to him personally to tell him, I sent a copy to his office myself. I sent a copy to the Council of State. I sent a copy to Parliament, to the Speaker. And I wrote to him to point out that he's in violation of two acts, 663 and 651. 651 is labor law, 663 Procurement Act as amended. And I pointed out to him that there is a provision in the act that says that the chairman should be qualified, competent, and experienced. And I quoted the definitions of both from Black's Law Dictionary. For someone to be defined as competent, he should have been trained and examined and possibly licensed. For someone to be experienced, he should have held the job and done it. So you can't call yourself a procurement person when you haven't been examined, you haven't gone to school, and you haven't held a title, a job that requires that you practice procurement.
While that is crucial, Afenyo was just saying that the man said it's some sort of laid down procedure. It's what he came to meet.
It's a practice.
So, yeah.
It doesn't make it right. So you see, the problem is that I said it here with Samson on Newsfile some time back, that if a fish will rot, it starts from the head. If the composition of the board that was supposed to regulate the practice is defective, you shouldn't be surprised that this will happen. So your chairman at the time, Professor Mayor Kunfi, distinguished academic, he's a zoologist par excellence. He was a deputy minister, or he was a minister of education.
POG Media. So obviously for you be bias nyankopon show be bia wetim ne ahwetwemade we aba bedru sam pempe so we do be bias nyankopon show be bias so POG Media ma wura mfi ade ba ko me show se be like be share no subscribe to the channel no say na political trending news bia ko twi ko bra ma bia na hanom POG Media so any ache penny say e be bra mo the biggest platform about political news be share mo say me so be bra mra me nje mo mra so mo so pi
education, he's the head of procurement entity, and that is his only experience to procurement.
Now, before I go to Colonel Festus Aboagye, procurement in state institutions often face political interference.
Yes.
Is this a result of what we are seeing right now?
Listen, I'll be very honest with you. My colleagues in the private sector are always moot. And I have always worked in the private sector, worked with multinationals. So I know how to speak my mind. So I'm not afraid. That's why I am not afraid to sit here. My colleagues in the public sector can't. Because by the time they get out of this place, they have been transferred to Wale.
Right.
So it is difficult for them to come up against authority. You must be someone who is a stubborn cat like me to not be afraid of any authority, including the president of the land, to point out to him, a lawyer, that you are breaking the law. Because the three private practitioners who were supposed to be appointed to the board were not also procurement people. So out of the board, that has 4 people being nominated from government, the Ministry of Finance and Attorney Generals. The other 4 people were not fit to be there. The only person who possessed training and competency on that board was the chief executive, who at the time, he had been acting for 2 years and had not been confirmed. And I had to draw the president's attention that according to the provisions of 651, if the guy does 6 months in the job, he is deemed confirmed. So you not confirming him after 2 years either signifies 2 things. Either you don't trust that he has what it takes to do the job, or you are not sure of what you want to do. He was quietly confirmed. But then the people who were not supposed to be there were left there. And that is why we have all these issues.
Let me go to Colonel Festus Aboagye. Some security experts argue that Ghana's ports suffer from high levels of corruption. And, that's what we are seeing, where goods can be cleared, illegally or illegally diverted, some lost without any connection. And I know that countries like Singapore, the UAE, have near zero cargo theft due to advanced digital surveillance. Is it time for Ghana to explore those options to prevent corruption-related incidents like this?
Well, I think your question presupposes that technology can address issues of dishonesty. That is, it's not founded at all. Behind the use of technology are human beings and systems, governance systems, procurement systems, port systems, and so on. So if persons within each of these institutions, clothed with appropriate authority, decide now to engineer a criminal network that cascades, all of these sectors The technology alone cannot do much. And I'm aware that we have digitally transformed the port services. At least the past vice president used to make a lot of noise about how technology had been installed to do ABCD, shorten procedures, eliminate the human interface, and so on. And yet, the government which supervised over the installation even got its figures wrong by reporting 3,000, when 3,000 probably was not the right figure at the port. So behind every corruption, of course, you can hack into technology and get it to do things that it shouldn't do. So this corruption is corruption institutionalized by human beings. And I read you a list of about 13 entities. Granted that sometimes I want to say the Ministry of Energy, as the Honorable Admaku Mensah said, he was there for only 6 months. I think somebody else, Napo also, was there before him. So within that ministry, which I have counted as one, you probably are looking at 2 or 3 or 4 individuals. The same with the Ministry of Finance. Of course, the former minister, given his longevity, was able to stay there for as long as he wanted. But come to the ECG, which is one entity, you had different or multiple managing directors. You've not asked me, but I'm more interested in the security risk. See, the expert, Mr. Atabedu or Beduata, has focused on the procurement aspects. You have had the minority leader, as usual, orchestrating certain things on the floor of the House. Honorable Admaku Mensah has come to say, let's remove politics out of it. Yet it's impossible to remove politics out of it. Because it is politics that send all those entities there that we are talking about. Now, we are talking about the energy sector. The first national security risk is energy security risk. But given the way and manner in which ECG has misconducted itself and denied the state of resources that it needed to maintain the infrastructure, which has resulted in constant power outages, which have implications for many sectors, the health sector, the industrial sector, and so on. Ghana's ability to maintain and expand its electricity grid is severely compromised. Probably some of the cables that we've seen and the meters and so on were meant to expand rural electrification. Now, all of that has gone down the drain because a criminal cabal, this is not malfeasance, it's not inefficiency. Of course, they use the conduit of procurement breaches or whatever to orchestrate organized criminality. Then you have economic stability threat. I'm trying to suggest that the national security threat are not physical threats, like an external power coming to attack us or some terrorist. You see, but the economic stability of this country has been affected by this ECG malfeasance, by accumulating poor storage fees. The 1 billion that could have done a lot in many different sectors has gone waste. Although the poor services probably would have made a bit more profit. Then you have the service delivery. What is ECG set up to do is to supply electricity or distribute and get people to use that. Look, it took me 3 years as a postpaid customer to move from the Thai grid, because I use solar, to go to 3-phase prepaid. 3 years. It was only at the time when the government was changing that I got it. Since I got it, for about 3 months or so now, I've paid not more than 30 Ghana cedis. And that amount, excludes the 100 cedis credit that I had. 30 Ghana cedis over 3 months. But every month, ECG was charging me 450 Ghana cedis They had decided that every day I consumed 8.06 kilowatt hour. So at the end of the month, they multiplied by either 30 days or 31 days. I decided at some stage that ECG was stealing from me, and I refused to pay. So I've got an accrual there. But indeed, if my account is audited scrupulously, ECG has stolen my money. Every month, 450 or 400 or 350 Ghana cedis. So the public service delivery is another area where national security has been affected. The individuals who need the power in order to go about their livelihoods, hairdressers, saloons, the malls, all of them are being denied this quality service. Then you have the external vulnerabilities. You see, I suggested earlier on that the report had not indicated some external interests. But I won't be surprised that those who were shipping the items to us probably are part of a certain international organized crime network. So whether we needed the items or not, in collusion or connivance with Ghanaian entities, the items were brought in. Now that seriously endangered, our vulnerabilities or worsened our vulnerabilities. Then the political instability. Of course, the Honorable Addo Mensah said, don't let us politicize it. But on the floor of the House, the minority leader was playing politics. The fact being that it is governments that institute some of these mechanisms or measures.
I had a Jumedi with my quine some information, but I shall say, like it, let's subscribe to the channel. Send a political trending news be a coach recovery, my piano. Hanon POG Media, the biggest platform about politics. I just say the Bremonias animal here, Juma, with the Obibia, I say.